And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on our podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. My guest today is Jody B. Miller. Jody has a pretty long list of accomplishments and things that she does that are amazing. She's in the work happiness space. She's just recently had a TEDx talk release that's taking off like wildfire. She's the president and CEO of C2C Strategic Management, best-selling author, podcast host, keynote speaker, all-around smart lady, and I'm glad she's joining us today. Welcome, Jody.
Oh, Peter, that's really sweet. Thank you so much.
Great. So my pleasure. So lots of plates spinning in the air. Give us a sense of what, if anything, a typical week or month looks like, because you're sort of the classic author, thought leader, speaker type, right? You're you're it.
Right. Yeah. And, it's interesting because I'm constantly reevaluating. I just had a gal on my podcast who's the CEO of a really successful company, and she's moving in a new direction. We had coffee and we were talking about, geez, like what comes first, right? Because like I just got back from speaking at a big global healthcare conference. I write for publications, I write books, I speak, I do workshops, like happiness workshops, employee engagement workshops, and then I'm taking this whole TEDx success, and which is basically based on breaking through barriers to find what you're really meant to do and finding that happiness that goes with it. And it's something I call the Masogi method, which if you listen to the talk, you'll know where that comes from and why it's so important to really step not just outside your comfort zone, but really make a big leap, but, do it responsibly. And so I bring that to the corporate world. And so a typical day for me is waking up pretty early, between 4:30 and 5.
Ouch. That's not pretty early. That's obscenely early.
Well, my guy is a writer,
Okay.
a very successful copywriter, and he has clients all over the country. So he's up. So it's pretty easy.
Cool.
But I start my day a little differently. I do a meditation in the morning, and it takes me about 15 minutes. And I got a lot of that additional input from one of my podcast guests, Ladro, who's written 7 books about meditation. And so I do a meditation and a gratitude, and it really grounds me in the morning. That's how I start my morning, and a cup of good Phil's coffee from San Francisco. And then I just jump into what's priority today. I want to accomplish one thing and finish the task at hand. That's a motto that I have to constantly live by, because I'm pulled, like you probably are as well, Peter, with all your clients, in many different directions. So I have to say, finish the task at hand. What is the one task today that I can actually finish? I do that first. And then I move to everything else and say, okay, I might work a little bit on this, that, put out some fires, deal with some client issues. And then I feel like I had a great day because at least I got one thing completely done. And that's how I have to just move forward. It doesn't all happen at once, but at least you feel like you make steps.
Got it. So I want to push a little bit on this sort of what comes first, but in a different sort of twist on it. So
sure,
if you were going to go down, or anybody was going to be an investment banker, an attorney, an accountant, consultants, there's not an exact linear path, but there's a pretty logical, okay, so if I was going to be an attorney, I'd probably go poli-sci undergrad, and then I'd take my LSATs, and then I'd figure out if I want to go big firm or on my own, or what my right? There's a path here. But if you wake up one day, like many of the folks listening to this show do, and say, I'd like to be a fill in the blank, author, thought leader, speaker, the what comes first is actually, a really important question, and most people actually ignore it. And the what comes first is answered by serendipity or chance, or, oh yeah, that was cool. Somebody invited me to speak and I sort of kind of dug it and whatever. But, talk about that a little bit, because you've been doing this a while and you've accomplished a lot. You've written 6 books and, very much in demand. But if I was someone that was, let's say you 10 or 15 years ago, and they're sort of thinking about this, so they're smart, they've had some success, they've got a perspective, whatever, what comes first?
It's so funny you're asking me this, because I have gone through this several times in my life. I started out in television, and then I decided that I had a solution for a process in television advertising, and I started a software company. And then I did become an investment banker as a result of that. So when you said investment banker, that just cracks me up. But here's my advice. As you get these callings, and this is kind of like my Masogi method theory. You get this calling deep in your soul that I need to do what really matters to me. And so if you look at my path, sometimes I made choices based on family. Sometimes I made choices based on this urge inside. And then as the opportunities, when you're open to the opportunities, they show up. And my advice for those listening who are thinking they want to make a 180-degree turn, which I've done probably 3 times in my life so far.
So I can't do the math, but that's
Yeah.
5, whatever, that's a lot of turns.
Yeah. So my advice is take the opportunity if it feels right, even if you don't know what you're doing, because you will learn along the way. When I became an investment banker, the head of this small investment bank said, "Gee, Jody, you've done the software thing that was successful. You've done strategic work for lots of Fortune 100 companies. I think you'd be a great banker." I'm like, I don't know anything about numbers. I was a communication sociology double major undergrad. I don't know
So
anything.
of course, that would lead to investment banking, right?
Right. So, but I learned it. So you can pretty much learn anything, and it was a very exciting run for me. And it was that path that led me to what I do now, because I saw so many unhappy candidates and well, not candidates, but bankers, I should say, because I ended up moving over to the other side and helping investment banks bring talented bankers on and then keep them engaged, because I was dealing with guys from Harvard and Stanford, MIT, miserable in their lives.
Hours a week and grinding it out. Yeah.
Right. And so that I started out, helping investment banks attract that talent, but then retain them. And that's where this happiness work kind of evolved from. So my whole life has sort of evolved from one opportunity to the next. And I've just kind of gone with the flow, what felt right, and jumped in.
Got it.
And so, yeah, that's what I would say. So what comes first is the urge, the desire, or the dissatisfaction where you are. And then to answer that call and take a chance and be okay with it.
Awesome. So I want to pivot from that. So thank you. That's great. So you've written 6 books.
Yeah.
So you're a serial author, right?
Yep.
Tell me about the difference between the thinking, and I don't mean about the content, but when you're going to publish and why, from your first book, and how that might be a little bit different today when you choose to write a book, how you start thinking about it from a marketing perspective, what success looks like, and how you decide when and when not to write a book.
Sure. Well, when not to write it is when I'm so busy that I can't get to it. I tend to, when I'm finishing a book, I tend to sort of unplug and dive in, and I go away, and I work for like 11, 12 hours a day, and I exercise, so that's sort of how I get my books done. But my first book was a novel, actually. And I wrote that during a break in my career when my kids were younger. And I wrote while they were in school. And then, of course, I just, did some consulting on the side, and I started a foundation, all this other stuff. But so that one I really dove into quickly, and I went with a small publishing firm in San Francisco that really, just so all you authors probably know and are nodding your heads, publishing firms don't do much for you except get your books in.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, they get your books in the bookstore. That's all they really do. Unless you're someone like, I have a relative who's a very famous author, so he gets an advance, a pretty substantial advance on his books, but he still does a lot of his own marketing, which is amazing.
Sure.
And he's very, very well known. And so I think that's really interesting. And then when I started writing the more of the business books, my first book was Hired, all about how you find your dream job. And I started to write more of these technical books because I had learned so much helping all these very smart people find what they're meant to do. So that became my first, Hired became my first book, and then an add-on to Hired. Now Hired for Employers is coming out. But when to publish, I think if you can have a series of 3 books, that's always a really good idea. Publishers like that.
So, but let's talk about this series of 3. So what would the cadence be in terms of when they come out? Is it going deeper or wider? How do you give me a sense of deciding on that? Because I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Sure. It all depends on what your expertise is. I mean, if you're going to write vampire ones, well, it's going to have a vampire theme, your first 3 books. For example, Hired in 2017. Now I'm doing Hired for Employers. So that's a theme. Like the Drift to Shift that just came out last year, which was very successful, was sort of the prelude of my TEDx. And now I'm starting the Misogi Method. And my vision for the Misogi Method books is a series of like Chicken Soup for the Soul, kind of for many, many, many Misogi Method books about everything. So the first one's about what it is, how you do it, what's the methodology, and then I will move into niches where you can apply that methodology to love, health, wealth, whatever.
And then you might partner with other subject matter
Yes.
experts, maybe a financial advisor or something like that.
Yes.
Got it. So that's about actually more about, I would say, brand and platform building
Yeah.
than just launching a book, right? So how, your platform, if you will, is the whole work happiness piece.
Right.
So walk me through or connect the dots for me, how the books connect to the speaking, connect to this platform, because, you've got to decommoditize in the space and you've got to find the thing that that you love and you're passionate about and you have the expertise in, but also that the market wants and is open to, having somebody new come at it in a different way. So how do you do that?
Yeah. So when I talk about work happiness, like I just did at this conference, it's really it's not too unlike the Misogi Method, but it's applying it to the work environment. The Misogi Method is kind of my thing that I talk about, and it can be applied to your personal life, to your work life, to your life, your relationships.
So let me wait. I want to pause there because that's a key piece. So I believe if you do the research that 30 to 40% of quote business books today would have been thrown in the self-help section 15 years ago.
Yes.
Right. Depending on, soft skills, listening skills, collaborative relationships, all these sort of things. And from a marketing perspective, when you put a book in the self-help section, you eliminate half the population because men don't buy those books because we know everything, or, we don't have feelings, or whatever the case is. So the things that are sort of weaving their way into quote business books are things that actually have huge ramifications, implications, applications on the personal side. So I love where you were going with the Misogi Method. Talk to me about how you sort of it could be personal, it could be relationship, but the focus of it and the workplace, therefore it's a business application.
Yeah, but it's many things. I mean, look at the book like 10X. 10X is not too unlike the Misogi Method, but Misogi Method has a deeper feeling piece to it. The book Grit, that's, it's a
Totally.
whole, there are a lot of books that are out there. I read quite a few books, basically summaries of top selling books each month. And I read them. I'm like, this isn't anything new. This isn't anything that I'm not talking about, but I'm looking at it as I'm a big believer, Peter, that you have to be happy with you first. And then we can apply it to work. We can apply it to your personal relationships and your attitude toward money or whatever it is that's important to you. But you got to start with you. And so, but the only way you can really get there is to make that huge leap, because when you achieve that or even come close, you do transform. And I have so many stories about people who have. I mean, even on my podcast, like this Olympic athlete gal, she's like, I don't know if I'm going to do it. I'm just going for it. And she just qualified for the marathon.
Wow. But let me ask you from a sales and marketing perspective,
Sure.
right? So if you were telling me that your methodology is, I've got to be happy with me first, that's fine, right? But from my perspective, that's on me, right? So I have to make that investment in me.
Yes.
of energy and time and effort. You're now moving this into the corporate space, which, by the way, there's exponentially more money. And companies, by and large, don't necessarily care about how I feel. They care about the impact, the ROI, the results that happen when they put content out to their people. So how do you sort of convince an organization that this is good at the individual level, it has benefits at the team level, and there's an ROI in terms of the impact at the organizational level where, for every dollar they spend to bring you in on a workshop, there's some ROI there?
Sure. And that's something I'm always reevaluating. I do believe it starts with you, and they do care about you, because if you aren't bringing the best you, the positive you, the can-do you to the table, then you're not going to be effective in the corporate space. So I think they do care. I just did a workshop where, it was my personality that really drove that workshop and my love for this workshop. And so that's really important that they know that you like how you are, that you like you. But in terms,
But my point is they're doing it from the perspective of, and I'm not being
what
judgmental.
are they going to get out of it, right?
Yeah, right. So
Yeah,
ultimately, they have a fiduciary responsibility, right? Because
that's
then you can
right.
go down the path of many companies are investing in yoga and meditation, mindfulness, all those sort of things. And I would argue, yeah, maybe a little bit because they care, but there's actually it's good for the individual and good for the org, right? So I'm just trying to expand on, well, how do you engage? Because a lot of people struggle with that the conversation of here's the benefit to the organization.
Right. I actually focus a lot on bottom line profits and cost savings because I was an investment banker and I know that money talks. So, one thing that I do is, and I offer a lot of my global clients, is I actually measure happiness. And I've partnered with a company. I do a lot of partnerships because I can't develop all this software with a small little company of a few people. So, I partner with a really cool measurement company based with a bunch of PhDs that have worked on this for about 11 years. And I bring that software into a global company and we onboard anywhere from 500 to 5,000 employees.
Got it. So it's measurement and analytics. So you
Yeah,
have so it's not just everybody comes out of your workshop and goes, "Oh, Jody, that was great. We feel awesome." Blah blah blah.
sometimes that happens and they solve problems. It all depends on what the company wants. Like one I just did for Deloitte actually had a multi-generational issue going on. And so, we did a workshop on that. But the measurement's really good because you can tell in real time what's going on with your employees. And then what happens is we come up with solutions such as customized workshops, and they usually fall within the 4 that I do, but we can even customize them a little bit more. And so then you can start to solve problems so people don't leave. And I mean, companies lose like 30 billion a year in just sick days because people are miserable.
So I love that you're taking something as I would say amorphous as happiness or quality. Like my happiness is different than your happiness, and it's not a unified. It's not like BMI or something that's got it. And you've got it down to the measurement and analytics level for the organization. Because to me, ultimately, when you're in the content space, whether that's as a speaker, an author, licensing your content, whatever, ultimately you have to change behaviors at the individual level that in the aggregate move business levers that are visible and measurable. And I think a lot of people miss that second piece. It's just, oh, it's intuitive. Of course, if people are happy, they'll be better at work. Yes. And somewhere out there is the CFO with the green visor with the pencil going, show me the ROI on this, 6-figure investment. So I love that how you've been able to accomplish that.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you and I were chatting before we started, Peter, about all these things, all these plates I was spinning in the air. For about a year, I was thinking, I'm not all touchy feely. I'm very much bottom line.
Yep.
Because I come from a corporate world, and I felt like I was missing a piece because I'd go in and convince them that they needed this workshop, or they'd reach out and we'd see a difference in the team and we'd see happiness and employee engagement increase. But now I kept thinking I need a quantitative way to really show this. And so that's where I started seeking out the best software system that I could find. And that's why I settled on this partnership. And we came up with, I'm now really connected with this company and I bring them into as many other companies as I can. And then I do the dashboard readings every month and we start to develop workshops and I go in and do a workshop. So it's a really nice system. And then the books are really for more of the masses. And a lot of the stories that will be in the Misogi method are actually some corporate stories as well as some personal stories of people that have really gone through this and come out the other side, finding that meaning, that success, that happiness that lasts.
Well, that's awesome. That's fantastic. I love that balance of sort of the quantification of in essence, emotionally based or soft skill or whatever, because there's so many people that could poo-poo that on the corporate side, right? Like, oh, well, yeah, it's a nice to have, or we'll do a one-off. But the fact that you've got dashboards, and KPIs and you're integrating that and reading the data, that's awesome. As we start to wrap here, any thoughts or advice that you'd give someone in terms of maybe some things that you're doing now that are gaining traction or things that you used to do that are working that aren't working as well? So either do more of this or a less of that sort of thing.
I think it's just such a fast-paced world. I think the more you can just get your name out there. So if you have a blog that you can get out there, like my blog attaches to my Amazon books. So when you go to my author, you see my blog posts. I write for lots of online, like Entrepreneur, Thrive Global, CEO Magazine. So if you can write for some publications, even if it's only a couple times a month, that's really helpful. And it's really getting your name out there. Post on. I only use Facebook and Twitter because I don't have enough time. And my publicity firm does a lot of that for me, but I don't always have them doing it every month. And then speak every so often. The speaking isn't really, unless you're like Tony Robbins, you're not going to make big money from speaking. But but you do gain visibility and you do gain clients. So I would say, if you can speak a couple times a year, and then just, it kind of all depends. If you're an author, what is that theme of your books? And I'm a big believer in that 3-book series. And don't think you're going to make a gazillion dollars off your books, but you might get lucky and have one that just breaks out. I mean, Drift to Shift was very successful for me, but it's not like I'm making millions of dollars from the book.
Not,
and I'm
not directly from the book. It's also the second wave of the book in terms of the offerings and the solutions. Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Lots of stuff that we covered, everything from data to speaking to publishing to sort of, what do you do next? So lots and lots of different pieces here that we sort of weave together in an interesting way. So this has been a lot of fun, and I appreciate your candor and sharing with everybody your journey. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much. It was really fun.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.